Hello everybody, and welcome to a new episode of Gaming in the Wild, a video games podcast about games from the artistic, creative side of the tracks, from indie to AAA. My name's John, I'm your host. I'm a journalist based out in Reykjavik, Iceland. And this week, it's been an interesting week. It feels like the time has just flashed by since I recorded the Pyre episode this time last week. Honestly, it feels like the days just vanished. But I have loads of interesting stuff to talk to you about. Here in Iceland, much like everywhere else in the world, we're on a kind of a lockdown. It's not a super strict one, but it's a bit of a lockdown. It does mean things like I normally travel outside of the country a few times a year. I think if you live in a small place like Iceland, it's really helpful to live somewhere like this, to get out of the country and to see new things and to see new places and to meet old friends. And this year, I've not had the chance to do so. I normally head over to London to meet a few my best old friends there and go and visit my family. But this year, it's been all about Reykjavik, all about home domesticity, patience, and letting this thing slide by. Self-isolation, quarantine, all of that different stuff. But occasionally, things come along to kind of liven it up, and although I haven't been able to go to London this year and do things like make my little pilgrimage to this fine tea shop that I go to, it's called Postcard Teas. I've been able to order the teas that I love because I'd run out, so I got some mail this week. I got a parcel today of Japanese tea, of Fuji Sencha and Gyokuro tea, and it really makes me so happy. It's very fine green tea, very finely produced, and it makes me happy every time I drink it, so I'm so happy to have received this parcel. I think at some point I will make a Patreon podcast about my love of tea. I've been thinking of doing some off-topic podcasts. I did a short one this week for my patrons about music and the best albums of 2020, as we've all been getting our Spotify charts through of our listening habits of the last year. And I think I will make one about tea at some point. But I did also receive this week a letter from William Cheer. And William is the director and creator of the game Manifold Garden, which I have made a podcast about in the past. It's a wonderful architectural exploration and puzzle game with a very psychedelic edge to it. It came out earlier this year for Switch and PlayStation 4 and Steam. So it's out there on all the consoles now, everyone can play it. And William tweeted a while back that he had some very special cards that he was going to send out to people who liked the game, and I was lucky enough to reply in time to win one. And it arrived today. I did a little Twitter live when I opened it up. It's a really special thing. I'm holding it right now. It's a Manifold Garden card. It looks like a greeting card, but it has like this beautiful embossed artwork on the front. And when you open it up, it opens into a three-dimensional architectural building that looks like one of the amazing spaces in the game. So it was such a nice thing to get, and it has a handwritten note from William. So thank you to William Cheer for that. I think I will be talking about Manifold Garden again quite soon as we round up the year. But this was really nice mail to get, so you know how much I love mail if you're a regular listener. So I was really happy to get my beloved Japanese tea and a fantastic art card from William Cheer. So that was a great way to start the day and to finish this week. I will say that the art card came with a download code for Manifold Garden on Steam, but seeing as I already own the game on Switch, I asked William if he'd mind if I gave the code away, and he said that's fine. So on my Twitter right now, at Gaming in the Wild, if you go there, there is a contest, and people who retweet the competition tweet, if people retweet it and tag a friend and follow me and follow at William Cheer and at Manifold Garden, someone is going to get that Steam code. So if you're interested in the Steam code, if you follow me on Twitter and retweet that tweet, you could be the winner. I'm really happy to give a copy of that game away because I really adore it and I love to spread the good word about Manifold Garden. Before we start talking about games, I will also do a little bit of housekeeping for the podcast. I'm really happy to announce that for December, I'm going to take a little break from the usual one game a week review format, and I'm going to ask some people who I respect and whose taste I enjoy if they will come on the podcast and be guests and talk about the things that they've played this year, new or old, and then also their 2020 games of the year. And some of those people will include Kieran Daly. He's an old friend of mine. He's kind of my games mentor. We'll talk about that when he comes on the show. But he also runs, along with some other people, the Radical Art Review, a really cool new magazine and website for art, politics, news, games, all kinds of interesting thought. They've just printed their very first issue. I think it's at Rad Art Review on Twitter. You can follow them, and the Radical Art Review website if you want to check it out. And Kieran will be a guest on the show next week. I also will have a show with Danny, aka Girl with Box. She's a streamer that I really enjoy and a Twitter friend. Me and her did an episode about The Last of Us Part 2 earlier in the year. So if you're a regular listener, you may have heard that one. Danny's a real joy to talk to, so I'm happy that she'll be on the show. And I'm also going to talk to one of the co-hosts of one of my favourite gaming podcasts, Time Played 3HR, which I listen to religiously every week. And I'm thinking of asking a couple of other people if they'll come on too, so across the next few weeks, we'll have a really interesting new format with some chats, some end-of-year roundups with these people and others. And finally, I was really happy to get 2 new patrons for my Patreon this week. I have a Patreon account at patreon.com/gaminginthewild, where if you enjoy the show and you want to show some support, you can sign up for as little as $1 a month or $3 or $5, for which you'll get weekly sale recommendations for Switch and for the PlayStation Network, and you will get also some exclusive episodes that I make for patrons, off-topic episodes about things like music and tea and other things that aren't gaming related. Sometimes a little gaming extra as well, like a little spoiler cast or something additional. So I'd like to give thanks and a shout out to my 2 new patrons, Andy Fontaine and Timothy Lambrecht, for signing up for my Patreon. If you would like to do so, you can join the gang, join the Discord community of other listeners. I'll put a link in the show notes if you're interested. It's patreon.com/gaminginthewild. And with that out of the way, I'm going to talk about several games this week. I've revisited a few old favourites, and there are a few new games too that I picked up in sales. First of all, I revisited a favourite that I covered at the very start of this podcast, and I have some more to say about it. There's been some DLCs and some new alterations and updates to the game. So let's talk about the Remedy Games 2019 contemporary classic, Control. So I talked about this game before all the way back in episode 2, and I remember absolutely loving the game. I mean, I was obsessed with this game before I played it. I actually was so desperate to play Control that it was the catalyst for me getting a PlayStation 4. It was the first game that I really wanted to play on the PlayStation 4, and so I'm really grateful to this game in a way, because my PS4 has become one of my main consoles of the year this year. I've played so many great games on it. I actually bought a physical copy of Control, which I then thought I had lost in transit when coming back to Iceland, so I bought a digital copy because I was so looking forward to playing it when I got home. And then I found the physical, so I've actually bought this game twice. And now, with the Black Friday sale on the Season Pass, I've invested in the extra chapters of the game that have come out since I finished this game way back at the start of the year. And I loved the game, but I had a hard time with it. I found the difficulty level to be right at the top of what I could manage, basically. There were some sections, particularly towards the end of the game, where I struggled to get through it. There are some combat gauntlets that are quite punishing. Towards the start of the game, when you're not really leveled up yet, it can be quite hard, and at the end, it's very tricky, famously tricky. But I was very, very happy to see when I opened up the game this time that they have added an assist mode, much like Celeste and The Last of Us Part 2. So for those of us who aren't kind of super hardcore shooter game masters, there is now a way to get into this game and to get through it a little less painfully. So I used the assist mode straight away. I finished the game, the credits have rolled on it, but I used the assist mode. There was lots left to do. There was some post-game content, a few extra bosses. If you've played the game, then you'll know that there is a moss boss deep in the oldest house where the game is set. And there is also Tomasi, who is like a recurring boss who flies and throws stuff at you. And I tried and failed with these bosses on normal difficulty and kind of caved in the end. For a while I thought I would get the platinum on control, but I caved in and gave up because of the difficulty level. But I used the damage slider. I took down the damage that Jesse Faden takes by 20%, and I put a tick in the box for the auto aiming. It's a snap aiming, like lock-on aiming, a little bit like the Pathless or Panzer Dragoon if you've played those games. So as you have to move around in this game a lot, you have to run constantly, and there are enemies coming at you from all sides. So aiming can be a little tough, but with the assist mode on, you can snap your aim to the nearest enemy and unload your gun, and it really makes the game a lot smoother. I kind of wish that this mode had been available when I had my first playthrough, because it would have saved me a couple of rage quits, to be honest with you. So it's a really good addition to the game. I think for people that are sort of hardcore Souls type people, this won't be such a hard game, but if you're used to the kind of games that I normally play, it was a challenge. So shout out to Remedy for helping gamers to have a challenge that they feel comfortable with and that they can manage. The game is really great. It's got so many great environments. It's got amazing graphics and lighting effects. It's got the best physics that I've seen in any game. I've talked about this game a lot without really introducing it. I assume that most of you guys know Control, but if you don't, it's a game set in the oldest house. It's a nondescript building in New York City, but when you walk through the door, it's like a TARDIS. On the inside, there is the Federal Bureau of Control, an investigative bureau that looks at paranormal occurrences. They find haunted objects of power, and they contain them. Inside the oldest house, the walls shift. Infection has sprung through from another dimension. And as Jesse Faden, it's your job. You're looking for your brother, who is in there somewhere. You're trying to stop the infection from taking over the building, and you're trying to contain and control and to best some of the strange creatures and objects of power that lurk within the oldest house. And you do this using Jessie's abilities. She is a telekinetic operative. She can throw objects with telekinesis. She can float. She can take over the minds of soldiers and turn them to her side. She has a whole range of powers that unfold throughout the course of the game. She's very satisfying to play as. She's very mobile. And you feel very free. When Control is at its best, you feel like the most kick-ass X-Man in the world, just with this massive power at your disposal. So I was happy to dip back into it. Using this assist mode, I was able to take out the final bosses that I was missing. And I'm going to play the DLC now. I started the first one, The Foundation, and I've really enjoyed it so far. It's like a new level to the oldest house, deep in the basement, where there is like a cave system, and there is a whole new riddle for Jesse to untangle with new enemies, a beautiful cave system with crystalline walls and red floor. It's very, very striking, like everything else in Control. So I thought I would give it a mention. It's just come to the Xbox Game Pass, so I think it's going to be a game that is popping up on a lot of people's radar for the first time now, or for Xbox fans who've been waiting to play it. There is an augmented version coming called the Control Ultimate Edition, which is going to be spruced up for the PS5. So if you are thinking of getting into Control, I believe it's on PS Now. It's on Xbox Game Pass. The Ultimate Edition is available for £30-something. It comes with all the DLC, and that edition will also upgrade to the next-gen consoles. So I was really happy to dip back into it. It's a fantastic game. I'm going to be streaming some of it on my Twitch channel, so if you're interested in seeing me try my best and probably die quite a lot on Control, you can come and check me out there across the next few days. That's Control. So another game that I've revisited lately, after spending a lot of time with it, is No Man's Sky. I've spent 130 hours playing this game this year alone. I'm a latecomer to the game. I came to it after a lot of the very caring and loving and dedicated work that Hello Games had put into this wonderful, expansive title. So for me, this has always been a game that had freighters where you could collect different starships of different classes and travel around the universe, that had base building, which was the thing that I loved most about it in a way, where you collect resources and process them and combine them, and you can build really beautiful bases with different shaped buildings, corridors and glass panels looking out at the view. Also exocraft like jeeps and motorbikes and even mechs that you can use to clunk around planets. They even added a feature that your freighter can transport your exo-vehicles to other planets. So as you're exploring the No Man's Sky universe, they've really just improved the quality of life in this game immensely. And even after I finished playing it, which I think happened in about May or June, Hello Games have still been adding to the game. There has been a Desolation update, which came out in July, which was kind of a spooky alien style update. So you can now find these abandoned freighters in space that are infested with creatures. So you can play No Man's Sky as a kind of a tribute to Ridley Scott's Alien. I went into one of the freighters and had a little look around, but it was really spooky and it was late at night, so I left again. But they've also released an update called Origins, which came out only in September 23rd, so it's very new. And in this update, they've added some new biomes, new kinds of planets with much more varied topography, including mountainous regions. So I flew to a new planet that had appeared in my system, and I flew down into this planet that had these kind of Jurassic Park style, huge undulating mountains and red oceans. So I landed my spaceship, went and swam in the ocean, and straight away I found some underwater architecture which you can interact with to find like buried chests in the ocean floor. There were new types of fish, new types of birds, and straight away I lost 3 hours playing No Man's Sky again. I was happy to see that this game has been nominated for the Best Ongoing Game at the Game Awards. The voting is open now. It was a real joy for me to dip back into No Man's Sky after all of that time that I spent with this game. It's been a really special game to me this year, so I really recommend it. It's on sale currently, I believe. You can get this game for next to nothing sometimes, and considering the amount of gameplay that is contained in it, as a free universe exploration game with story elements, space combat, resource management, base building, exploration, quite a cool story as well. It has quite a cool story campaign. There's really just endless things to do. There's also multiplayer, and now there's this kind of spooky freighter update. It's never been a better time to play No Man's Sky. So I still stand by this game as one of the best of the generation, and just a real thrill to go back in and find that even now it's still developing. That's No Man's Sky. I also picked up recently a game that a lot of people will probably be familiar with. It's the Alto Collection, which originally came out, the original game Alto's Adventure, came out all the way back in 2015 when it was like a bit of a mobile gaming sensation. It's a one-touch snowboarding game where you start at the top of a mountain, you slide down these very steep, beautiful slopes. You can do all kinds of stunts. You just press the button to jump, you hold it to spin in the air. You can grind along these kind of bunting ropes with flags, and along different surfaces you can sort of collect these llamas that have escaped from your farm. There are chase sequences where you'll pass like an old elder at a campfire and they'll chase you for a while, and you have to kind of hold them off by speed boosting. You get little speed boosts when you do different tricks. You can collect crystals. It's a little bit sort of a roguelike-y in that every time that you are taken out by a chasm or an elder, or by just missing your jump timing, you'll start back at the top of the mountain, but the mountain is different every time. So every time that you start the game, you start at the top of the mountain, you slide down, and you're given a couple of goals. For example, in this run you have to collect 5 llamas, or in this run you have to land a double backflip. And so there's always something new to do in the game, despite the fact that it's kind of a very simple mechanic. I got quite addicted to it. I played it pretty solidly for a couple of days. I got up to level, I think, 22 or something, and there are 50 or 60 levels that you can reach with different tasks to do. It was only £5 on the Switch for Alto Collection, which is Alto's Adventure, and also the sequel, Alto's Odyssey. So I would recommend that one if you would like something very easygoing, something that you can pick up and play on the bus, something that you can play before bed, something that's quite a casual gaming experience, but nonetheless quite relaxing, quite engaging, very beautiful to look at with weather effects and this snowy mountain environment. That's the Alto Collection on Switch. This next one is a game that I've been curious about for quite a while, and so I was really happy to see it on a Black Friday sale. I'm not exactly sure how you pronounce it, so forgive me if I get it wrong, but I think it might be Gato Roboto, or Gato Roboto? Gato Roboto? I don't know. Anyway, it's Gato Roboto. Gato Roboto. I really haven't got a clue. I'm so sorry for massacring this game name. But I've played this one only for an hour or so, but it's a 1-bit Metroid-like, but with a completely different vibe. It's by a company called Doinksoft, which is the most ridiculous name for a developer. It came out in May 2019. It's published by Devolver Digital, which is usually the sign of a really good game. It's a 1-bit graphics, so it's black and white pixel graphics, and you play as a cat. You don't play as Samus, the famous Metroid heroine, very serious. You play as a cat who is the pet of a space pilot who crashes on a kind of a problem-filled space station. He is stuck in his ship, so he has to trust his trusty cat, who pretty quickly jumps out of the ship, finds a mech suit, and starts travelling through the station trying to get things in order. This involves going up and down lifts, jumping around, doing platforming. You have a gun, you have a rocket launcher, and you pick up abilities as you go. You unlock different abilities for your suit. There are different puzzles, there are different environmental puzzles. As the cat, you can exit your mech suit and slip through small gaps. You can also swim and scramble up sheer surfaces, but you can't take any damage whatsoever. But when you're in the mech, you have your rocket launcher, your gun, and you're very tough and can take like 5, 6, 7 hits. But you can't go in water and you can't jump very high. So you have to use your cat abilities and you have to use your mech abilities. The game has a really good sense of humour. It has really nice music. If you're a fan of pixel art games, you're going to love the aesthetic of this one. I've only just started out with it, so I'm just going to give it a little mention here. I'll come back to it later after I finished it. I believe it's 3 or 4 hours long. Might still be on sale. Even if it's not, I think it's just £7 normally. That's Gato Roboto? Gato Roboto. Gato Roboto. Boto. Robo. The final game that I'm going to talk about today is a much-loved JRPG called Ni No Kuni, The Wrath of the White Witch. It originally came out, I was stunned to find out, way back in 2011 on the PS3. It even existed in some form before that on a handheld, but the version of it that we know today was the PS3 version. It came to the Switch in 2018. It's a JRPG, which means that it contains elements of world exploration with a big world map. This particular game contains sort of semi-turn-based battles. So when you get into battles, you pop into a separate viewpoint again. You can move around using the joystick, but you have to use this timing-based, turn-based system to either defend or cast magic or hit or switch between different members of your party. So it has JRPG mechanics. If you've played like the original Final Fantasy games or anything like that, you'll be familiar with this. And I'm not usually the biggest fan of JRPGs. Back in the day, I played Secret of Mana. I played Final Fantasy VII. So I've got some sort of track record with them, but I haven't revisited them since all the way decades ago when I played those original games. And the real selling point of Ni No Kuni is that it was made by Level 5 in collaboration with Studio Ghibli, the studio that is behind Spirited Away and Princess Mononoke and Totoro and all of these beloved Japanese animations that have had a kind of a new lease of life because they're all on Netflix these days. If you haven't seen them, I highly recommend going to watch them. But Ni No Kuni was made in collaboration with this studio, so it has this very familiar, very beautiful, hand-drawn art style with amazing characterization, great voice acting, and just a visual style that is utterly charming. The main character is a little kid called Oliver, and he has a familiar, like a little fairy helper called Mr. Drippy, who is voiced in the most amazing Welsh accent I've ever heard in a game. And they go on an adventure together. They open gateways between the world that we know, the contemporary world, and a parallel magic kingdom. And you zip between these two worlds, solving puzzles, having adventures. It's like a grand fairy tale style, very childlike. And for a JRPG, they can sometimes be a little intimidating because they have so many menus, so many systems to learn, different inventories, different characters, different skills that you can unlock and all of this kind of thing, different currencies. But this one really walks you through it. It's very gentle. It's kind of designed to appeal to children, but also to kind of remind adult gamers of their innocent younger days, and to bring that beautiful Studio Ghibli atmosphere of innocence and imagination to games. And so I've been really, really into this one. I think I'm 3 or 4 hours into it now. It's a long game, so I think I'm going to play this one slowly over time. But it's also on sale. It's been on PlayStation 4, it's been on Switch. So if you're interested in Ni No Kuni, it's early days for me, and I'll probably talk about it again later, but I can give it a recommendation. That's Ni No Kuni, Wrath of the White Witch. So that's the show. I hope you enjoyed it. I know it's a bit of an unusual one in that I didn't have a main review this time, and I went back to some games that I've covered before, but I hope you enjoyed hearing about the Control DLC, the No Man's Sky DLC, and all of the other cool games that I've talked about today. I appreciate you listening as always. I will mention that I got a really nice review on the Apple iTunes podcast store the other day, and it really cheered me up. So if you happen to be listening on an Apple device, I would really appreciate anyone who drops a rating and even maybe writes a couple of words on the podcast page. It helps other people to discover the podcast when they are searching for games. It's the way that I found some gaming podcasts that I really, really adore. It's how I found the Short Game podcast. It's how I found Time Played 3HR. It's how I found the So Video Games podcast, all of which I listen to every single week. So it really helps out Gaming in the Wild if people can find it when they search for games. So I really appreciate that. I will remind you guys again that if you fancy winning a copy of Manifold Garden, there is currently a competition going on my Twitter at Gaming in the Wild. If you want to see me playing some Control, you can find me on Twitch at Gaming in the Wild. I'm also on YouTube and Instagram. And I always love talking to listeners and finding out what you've been playing and making new friends, gamer friends online, so please do come and say hi on some of those channels if you would like to. Thanks very much for listening. I'll be back next week with a new show with some guests, hopefully with Kieran from the Radical Art Review. That's something to look forward to. Take care of yourselves and each other. Bye bye for now.